Okay, this is the fourth and final lesson in the financial literacy unit. Today we're talking about deductions, so money that is taken off of our paycheck, and also this idea of net pay or net income. Some keywords we have to go over here first. So gross income. When you hear this word gross, it doesn't mean disgusting in this context. What it means is it means your total income before anything is deducted off your paycheck. So income earned before any deductions, before taxes or anything like that. And we'll talk about what these deductions could be in a second. Deductions is amount taken off the gross income. So some examples of deductions could be taxes, benefits. Often companies offer like a medical plan or things like that, and that's the cost for that is taken off of your paycheck. Employment insurance, which would pay out to you if you lost your job. CPP, which is pension. This is Canadian. If you're in a different country, that's probably called something else. And there's lots of others as well. Depends on where you work. But taxes and benefits and employment insurance and pension would be like the most common. Okay, so really what you're taking home at the end of the day is your net income. That's like what you are actually getting in your bank account. So that's the number that really matters if you're like making a budget for yourself. So your net income is just going to be your gross, the amount you're paid, your total before any deductions minus the deductions. Okay, so let's do some like common calculations here. All of these numbers were updated pretty recently, so they're like fairly realistic. Okay, so let's look at this first one here. It says John's before tax deductions include group life insurance policy at 1.5% and a union dues of 2.5%. So if you belong to a union, typically you would have to pay some money for that union to run. So it's a percentage of your paycheck. His gross salary is $450 every 2 weeks. How much are his biweekly deductions? Biweekly means every 2 weeks. Okay, so we need to do 1.5% and 2.5%. So first thing to do is add those together. You don't want to do them separately because then you're doing twice as much work. So put those together first. So his deductions are 1.5% plus 2.5%, which is 4%. Okay, and so then we want to do 4% of $450. So remember, you change that to a decimal, and then we multiply. Of means multiply, and then so that's what we would put into our calculator: 0.04 times 450, and we get $18. So just for those two deductions before taxes are taken off, $18 would be taken off his paycheck every 2 weeks. Okay, let's do a more complicated example. So often there's certain types of deductions that are taken off before taxes, and then there are certain types of deductions that are taken off afterwards. So let's do an example with showing like all the types of deductions that could be taken off. So let's look at Alfred here. I'm just going to highlight all the key numbers. So Alfred earns $852 per week. Okay, his before tax deductions, I'm going to use yellow for these. So that's before taxes are taken off. So we take these off first. Our union dues and a pension plan. Okay. Then these are the tax rates. So these are the things set by the government. His federal tax rate, that means it's going to the Canadian government, is 15%. And then his province, every province has a different tax rate, but this one happens to be 5.06%. I think that's a BC one, a British Columbia one. And he also pays 5.95% to a maximum of $3,754 to the CPP, and then a 1.3 0.63% for EI. They max out, so like if you earn a lot of money, you stop paying those at some point. So we're going to calculate his net income per week here. So I'm going to do the yellow parts first, the before tax deductions first. So I'm going to split my page here into like two. So I'm going to do the yellow parts first, before tax. Okay, so we want to add up those percentages. We don't want to do them separately because that would take extra time. So if I add up 2.5% plus 3%, which are those two, the amounts for the union and the pension, we get 5.5%. So a quick way to do a deduction is to take off, like if you start with 100% of your salary and you take off 5.5%, this is the faster way to do it, you end up with 94.5% remaining. So we want to calculate the net pay. So this is how much of our salary is going to remain. So that's the percentage that we want to calculate to figure out how much is remaining. So we want to do 0.945. That's 94.5% of our salary, $852. And I've already typed that in. I get $805.14. Okay, so that's my before tax amount that remains after I take off the pension and the union. Okay, now I'm going to go over to my my CPP and my EI and my taxes. First thing I want to do is ensure that I don't go to the maximum for CPP and EI. I'm just going to do a quick calculation to show that first. So I'm going to check the EI here. If I do for the whole year, I would work for 52 weeks. And if I multiply that by 0.0163, which is 1.63% for EI, I get $722.16. So I'm not really anywhere near the maximum. Same for CPP. If I just do a quick check here, 852. I'm just trying to see if I max out, because if I max out, then that can change my calculation. Oops, 0.0595. And if I do that, I get 2,636 and 9 cents. So I'm just going to put under here, neither of these, not enough to pay the maximum. So then in this case, if you're not earning enough to pay the max, so what I mean by the max is this number quoted here, then you would just pay that percentage. Okay, so we're just going to pay the percentage for those. Okay, so now on to the before tax deduction, or the tax deductions. So we're going to add up all of those numbers. So it's going to be all those green numbers there. Federal tax, which is 15%. His provincial tax, which is 5.06. His CPP, which is 5.95. And his EI, which is employment insurance, for 1.63. If you add up all of those percentages, you get 27.64. Okay, so that's what's going to be taken off. So if we want to know how much remaining, we want to take 100%, which is what we're starting with, and we want to deduct 27.64. This is how to do it in one step. We're going to have 72.36% remains. That's how much percentage of our paycheck is going to be left over after we take off these 4 deductions. Okay, so that's the number that we want to use in our calculation. So we're going to go 0.7236 multiplied with our 805. We're using this number because that is the new, or that's the amount we're earning after those first yellow deductions, right? And we get $582.60. So then the net income per week, is $582.60. Okay. So essentially what happens on a person's paycheck is there's before tax deductions, which would usually be things that relate to like where you work at, like unions, pension plans, benefits, things like that. You take those off first, you get that number. Then you take any government rates off, taxes, CPP, EI, take off those, and then you get your final net salary. All right, so that's the end of that lesson.